Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we are going to talk about the Pokemon card that sold for $480,000, and then 3 months later it sold for about $300,000 less. That was the Topsun Charizard PSA 10 Blue Back No Numbered card. This first went with Golden Auctions for 480K, which at the time was a public record sale, and then 3 months later, the same exact copy sold with PWCC Premier Auctions for $190,000. For those of you doing the math at home, that is a $290,000 loss in 3 months. You get a little 2-for-1 record action. On one hand, you have the highest publicly sold card, and then 3 months later, you have the biggest known loss for a Pokemon sale ever. Naturally, this is a very juicy, hot topic. There's a lot to talk about why this happened. I think this video might actually circulate because I'm going to discuss some information here for the first time in relation to the claim that Topsun was the first release ever. But before we get to that, let's start with the basics. Why did this card take such a bath? Why did it do so poorly? I think it's fair to first mention that the auction process was not ideal. The link timer was very cumbersome. For anyone who's bid on Yahoo Japan, they have an extended format where if you bid at the end, it'll add 5 minutes, and then the auction will close when there are no more bids in that extended 5-minute process. However, with PFCC, what they did is they linked all those timers. So if you bid on like a Jackie Robinson card, that reset the 15-minute timer on Charizard. So that happened for like 4 to 5 hours. Not an ideal scenario. Definitely not the major reason why the card did so poorly, but it was certainly a relevant factor for, the overall price for not only Pokemon, but I think a lot of the products sold. Now, another question before we arrive at our destination of basically disproving the claim about Topsun. A lot of people lately in Pokemon have been asking who's been buying these cards. Topsun's always had a market. It's always been a niche thing that people have always bought and sold there. But the premiums lately have been through the roof. And I remember talking about this in Patreon a couple months back about how I just deduced that I think it's a lot of sports guys, because if you look at it from like a low pop perspective, as well as the rookie card claim, first Pokemon card, that's exactly what a lot of the modern sports chasers are going for, like the RPAs, the refractors, the 1 of 1, 5, 10, the 1 of 1 of 8 type stuff. That is exactly what those sports guys are looking at. And if that claim were true, that this were the first Pokemon cards with that low pop combo, it'd make a lot of sense why these sports guys were coming in, which is exactly what was happening. There were so many cross collectors buying these cards. I verified it with some of the friends I know at auction houses. Majority of the buyers, if not all of them, were sports collectors or cross collectors coming in because in their mind, this fits that exact thing they're looking for in low pop rookie combo. Now, we finally arrived at the juicy destination of, are these actually the first Pokemon cards released? I did a very, very deep dive in the internet. I went all the way down to the ocean floor with like the relicants and like the 400 million-year-old fossil fish that are down there. And shout out to Shizzle Me Timbers as well, who really helped find some of these sources. According to the official Topsun website, Topsun makes the cards, they didn't file the Pokemon patent until 1997. If that's not enough, according to the official Nintendo Japan website, the first ever Pokemon merchandise, just general name, merchandise, wasn't released until 1996. And it was these little guys right here, the cute little chunky chews that we all grew up with and loved. That was the first ever merchandise released. And then later on, you could see as well, they state when the trading card game was later in 1996. Last I checked, 1996 is after 95. 1997 is also after 95. Those are two very strong sources that contradict the claim that these were the first Pokemon cards in 1995. That claim has to not only disprove the official Nintendo website, but also the actual Topsun site itself. More specifically, a lot of people are probably like, well, why did this happen? How did that label become a 95 label, right? I think honestly what happened is PSA looked at the bottom, saw 95, put it in the label. That's very common. If you look at a lot of cards like this right here, just a Rapidash card I have on my desk, it says 78 there in the corner. That has no significance to its release. It's just the Pokédex number for Rapidash, but PSA just plopped it on the label because they decided to. I honestly think that's where all this started. I don't think it was a malicious, ill-intended thing. I think it was just kind of like one of those, recess rumors where people would be like, oh, Peekaboo is the best Pokemon, or Ancient Mew is the rarest card. It was one of those type of things where it just happened. It said 95. People were like, yeah, 95 is 496, so this must be the first. And again, it was like one of those recess rumors that just caught like wildfire and took off. But if you go to the actual sources of the Topsun website and Nintendo website, there's nothing that verifies that. There's nothing on Nintendo's site that claims that. Topsun's patent was filed in 97. There's a lot of evidence indicating otherwise. So I think it's very, very, very safe to say, as it stands, that is an unverified claim. Minimum, it's an unverified claim. I think a lot of people would take that evidence and say, yeah, it's disproven. But I'll just be even more cautious and say it's unverified, because that still disproves it. Saying it's unverified is still disproving it. So yeah, it's not a verified claim is where we can all agree right now as it stands. And of course, with that said, if someone can get into, Sugimori's safe and find the documentation that proves this otherwise, I'm always open to that. Of course, I think every Pokemon collector is always open to new information. That's part of adapting. But as it stands, yeah, the objective mountain you have to climb is like scaling the white wall. Like, you got to be one of those, like, whatever the rank is in rock climb, like G14 or whatever it is, you got to be able to scale that wall. Like, it's just a very, very, very unverified claim at this point. Also, there's some anecdotal things to talk about, and I'm prefacing it by saying this is more subjective, but a lot of Pokemon collectors, I think, would agree that Topsun definitely doesn't deliver aesthetically as other non-TCG sets. A good example is Cardass from 1997. Every single art from here is unique Sugimori art from start to finish, from 1 to 151. The Cardass checklists are just masterpieces, like beautiful art, unequivocally beautiful art. Why I'm saying this is because this is all unique Sugimori design that's more in line with how the TCGs are produced. So when you go back to something like Topsun, it's just that same old stock Charizard we've seen hundreds of times, just plopped on a card. They throw a design on there. There's nothing really unique going on. When you look at majority of the TCG, not only the sets, but like the promos and everything else that creates the, beautiful, robust landscape that is Pokemon cards, you have numerous artists contracted to do that work. You have Arita, Sugimori, Kinabuchi, rest in peace. You have Komiya, Himeno, going down the line all the way to like Sao, Kirasaki, and all these new artists. You have so many people that are commissioned to do certain segments of each set that creates, again, this nice, robust experience. Even in the case of this one was Sugimori, who did all of it. It's nice, unique art. Now, that's not something that you need to happen, because obviously Topsun exists. It's a real thing. But what I'm getting at is it seems very counterintuitive that if this were the first set, that it would be so lackadaisical. Even the first Pokemon, like, base set, I know people criticize it like, yeah, the background is generic or whatever. It's still much more imaginative. You could tell it was much more pointed. There was much more thought put into it, which is in line with how Pokemon operates. If you talk to anyone who works with Pokemon, any YouTuber who's got a blue check mark that's not filming out of a grandma house, you talk to them how it is work with Pokemon. They are very meticulous, almost to a fault at times. Like Pokemon, little side tangent, they're known to be very strict with their IP, like top 10 easily most strict franchises with their IP, like in general, to the point where like Arita can't even design a Pokemon anything for his family. Like, he cannot draw a Pokemon for his family because that's in his contract. That's how binding they are. But the point is, this all funnels to that idea that Pokemon is very meticulous. They're a very meticulous company. So when you combine that anecdotal reality of Pokemon being very meticulous and pointed and thoughtful, mixed with the patent wasn't filed till 97, and on the official Nintendo site, the first Pokemon merchandise was released in 1996, that mountain is getting even taller and more inverted. Like, you're doing like Tony Hawk 900 at this point, trying to climb that thing. Like, it's not looking good for that claim that these were the first cards. And again, I'm always open to being disproven, but this is a lot of evidence proving otherwise. And I think it's just one of those things that, just like it just was a recess rumor that went on for a long time. I think part of that's also another thing I want to tie in here is that within Pokemon, Topsun really aren't things people are writing home about. I'm not trying to dog them. Obviously, I have some of the cards. I have a little bit of everything. I love Pokemon in general, but it's definitely not one of those cards that people are like crawling over each other to get. There are certain people probably who are like certain niches, but overall, it's always been one of those low-key things. And why I'm saying that is because the price trajectory of $300,000 down in 3 months is an indication that the buyer pool is very shallow. Because if you had a more robust buyer pool, you wouldn't have had that much of a pitfall. A good example is, sticking with the high-end category, Pikachu illustrators going in Yahoo, which is a restricted market, and you were also gambling, not knowing what you would receive. You know, that card could come with an indent or something you can't see in the photos. But the bottom line is those were auctioning like right under 200,000 at one point, then above 200,000, and then eventually 400,000. They moved like this. And not everything has to go like this, but what this indicates is with more supply ever that we've seen in the past couple of years of illustrators than the previous 20, the market reaction was like this. It had upward mobility every single time. Why? Because the depth of that pool was much deeper and larger than Topsun. Because again, there's more organic demand for something like the Illustrator because it's verified. It's a known card. It's a known release. There's documentation you can look at. There's release photos. There's magazines you can read. We can even get to the point now, we're so deep into it that we even know some of the winners. Like, that's what's so great about the verification. One thing I wanted to close with is that I'm always screaming loud and proud from that mountaintop now that's like up into the clouds. Unverified cards are always a risk. Anytime you have unverified in that recipe, it's going to have that tinge. It's going to leave that flavor in your mouth like, oh, what if this was something that, you know, was taken out of the factory by a disgruntled employee? You know, you'll just never know for sure. And maybe one day, if I ever exit Pokemon, I'll talk about that $1 million information I always flirt with in Pokemon that would really put into perspective some of these cards and some of the information people think about these cards isn't 100%. You know, I'm not talking like, oh, a couple extra copies. I'm talking like the entire ideas that you have aren't real, like in the case of Topsun. So that's why when you have something that's unverified, you always have to exercise caution, where if you contrast it with all the other big ticket items of Pokemon, any trophy card, any hard to grade WotC card, all this stuff's verified. It's known, it's been known from the jump. You know, where something like this, it really flew under the radar, and I honestly think it's one of the longest lasting rumors in Pokemon. And again, it's just one of those recess rumors. I don't think anyone meant any harm. I think it was just like, oh yeah, it says 95 on there, we'll put it on the label. I really just think that's what it is. But again, that point about the dip is because the lack of the buyer pool. You know, if in 2 sales you have that much of a drop, I think that indicates that there just aren't that many buyers. Probably stating the obvious for most people. And there's so many examples of other cards. You know, they can go down too. Like some other cards have had a soft retrace lately, but it's not gone like this. Like you didn't buy a PSA 10 versus Charizard 300 and then the next day it's 100. You know, it didn't do that. You've had so many other sales, so many more volume, larger volume of sales, and that trajectory is much healthier, where this one is by far the biggest loss, I think, ever, and hopefully ever, that we'll experience, because whoever that person is that bought this, my heart goes out to you, because that's a lot of money to lose. And anyway, hopefully this video clarifies some of those claims, really contextualizes, you know, what you should expect when you go into something unverified, and why doing your due diligence for especially high-end items is very important, and why actual experts are important, because it's real easy to open your mouth these days and use a catchy thumbnail and just, you know, get sponsored by someone and do all the run-of-the-mill things that aren't actually helping anyone. This is one of those scenarios where if more people did their due diligence before, instead of getting caught up in the hype, because that's really, if there is an insidious part of this, it was hyping up like, oh, first card, without actually checking, is this the first card, you know? And if it is, where's the proof of that? You know, we need that before we start making those claims, especially flirting with $500,000. So anyway, that's what I have. Hopefully it was useful. Lot in this video, a lot to talk about. As usual, you know the deal. Let me know how I feel, and that's pretty much it, guys. Till next time.